Thanks, Janet. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm Patti Clark. I have been, just in terms of my clean and sober background, I got sober the first time in 1988 when I was 30 years old, and then was clean and sober for almost 13 years. And then I decided to leave 12-step recovery and start drinking again because I felt like I'm fine, I can do this. And I was out drinking again for almost 13 years, so almost equal the amount of time. Then one day I said, this is insane. And so I stopped drinking again, and that was in November 2014. So I'm just over 10 years sober again. I'm living in Portugal. I was born and raised in San Francisco, 60s and 70s, and flower child, definitely doing the drugs of flower children. And after living there through my teens and early 20s, I started traveling. My boyfriend then, my husband now, and I traveled for about 4 years in Southeast Asia and New Zealand, and we both fell in love with New Zealand. And when we wanted to start a family, we moved to New Zealand in 1992, lived there for over 30 years and had 2 children, 2 sons, beautiful boys, and they both fell in love with women from Europe and told us that they wouldn't be coming back to New Zealand. And they both said, we need you guys to move to Europe. And we loved Portugal, and so started the process and moved here last year.
Interesting, very interesting. Can I ask you what age you started drinking? Was it the 70s in San Francisco?
It was. I was raised in a very dysfunctional alcoholic system. Both parents drank, but my mother was the identified alcoholic. And she died when I was 16, but before that, she was basically not present because she was drunk. And because of the chaos and the difficulty as an adolescent, I was very uncomfortable in my skin. But to answer your question more succinctly, I was 13 when I first started drinking and doing drugs, both.
Wow, okay. And how did it evolve as you got into your 20s and 30s?
I mean, like a lot of your guests, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and a lot of your guests, it's like that first drink where you went, oh, okay, yeah, now I'm comfortable in my skin. And it was so easy to drink because there was so much alcohol in my house. And I found a peer group that drank a lot, and I was drinking to blackout almost immediately. At 12, 13, I was blacking out almost every weekend. 13, 14, not 12. I was out of primary school. And started doing speed when I was in year 7. So at about 13, 14, year 8, acid, all kinds of things that were available in San Francisco. I was very fortunate, Janet, that school came easy to me, quite easily. Academic subjects were relatively easy, and that was a gift because I was able to have a plan to escape and knew that I wanted to do okay in school. So I never completely fell off the track, I guess is a good way to say. I went to Berkeley, which was a wild school in the 60s and 70s. So kept doing a lot of drugs and alcohol, but did finish. When I finished university at 22, I thought, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I was reading a magazine, and it said that there were 10 men to every woman in Alaska. And I said, that's where I want to be. And so I got a job as a bartender in Juneau, Alaska, right after I finished university, and hid in a candy shop. It was crazy. Lived there from 23 until 26, bartending. This was in the 80s during the Alaskan oil pipeline. So there was a lot of money. And so men that had been either out fishing or on the pipeline would come into town with their pockets bulging with cash. And I made more money bartending in the 80s than I ever made teaching or writing or running workshops. It's sad. They would drop a couple of $100 in tips, and a very common tip was cocaine. I was doing a lot of drinking, a lot of drugging. It was an insane lifestyle, really, really crazy, really insane. I was telling myself that I was having fun, but it was so destructive. My boyfriend, then husband now, wrote to me from Australia. He had been working in Australia, and he said, come and join me. Let's meet up in Bali. I saw that you're doing a workshop. Well, it's wonderful. I've run workshops there when I was living in New Zealand. It's a fabulous place. Yeah. Anyway, so we talked about rendezvousing, and the same week, no lie, the exact same week that I got the letter from him saying, let's rendezvous in Bali, I also got a job offer to teach full-time. I had been doing teaching part-time as well as bartending at night. And a woman that I was teaching with, there was a condo next door to her that was for sale. And at this point, because of the money in Alaska, you could get a interest-free loan to buy a place. And it was relatively inexpensive. So I could have bought this condominium, interest-free loan, got a full-time job offer teaching, as well as still bartending and making stupid money, or I could go to Bali and throw it all up. I remember so well, I get tingles even telling the story. I sat on a log in Juneau looking out at the water and started crying and saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I just got these chills running through my body and heard, almost like someone was standing next to me, leave or you're going to kill yourself. And I did. So I quit the job, didn't take the condo, left and met up with Jess in Bali. And we traveled throughout Asia and into New Zealand and around for almost 4 years. And then went back to the States and worked there for a while before going to New Zealand.
Still drinking during this time?
Yes, I was still drinking, although not as insanely, because we were traveling and we were on a limited budget and we're doing on a shoestring kind of travel. However, when I did get back to the States, I did start drinking again. And one of the things that happened was Jeff threatening me and saying he couldn't deal with this anymore. Also, I was almost 30 and we were talking about starting a family. And my biggest compulsion almost was, I will not be my mother. I had an appointment with an astrologer, and she did this astrology chart, and she was pointing at different parts of my chart, and I was telling her a bit of my story, and then she kind of circled with her pencil. Now, what about this? There looks like a lot of alcohol here. And I said, yeah, my mother died of alcoholism. And she goes, okay, that makes sense here. But I still see this. What about this? And I said, my dad's still a practicing alcoholic. Okay, that makes sense here. But I still see this, and her pencil is getting harder. And I said, my sister is actually an alcoholic, but she's in recovery. And she said, okay, that's fine. But Patti, I still see this, and her pencil is really hard. And she looked at me straight in the eye and said, Patti, are you an alcoholic? I exploded, sobbed, ran out of her house, and ran back to the apartment that we were in, threw stuff in the car. And the next day when we arrived in Tucson, I went to my first AA meeting.
Okay. And how did it go at AA? Did you stop drinking pretty quickly, or did it take a while?
When I got sober the first time, 1988, 2 days before my 30th birthday, I felt like I came home. I walked into the room. It was a women's meeting. There was just a throbbing energy that I thought, oh my God, this is heaven. And I was able to give up alcohol. I really felt this peace and this sense of home. However, we left in 1992 to go to New Zealand. And in New Zealand, recovery was very young there. Tucson was the recovery capital of the States for a long time. People went there to dry out, right, the desert. And they weren't doing it right in New Zealand. And quite literally, there were old men, big book thumpers. When I would cry and say, I'm going crazy here, they literally would say, shut up, keep coming to meetings, don't pick up a drink. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, plug it, listen. And I was just like, this sucks. It's not working. So I quit going to meetings. And to be honest, Janet, I was quite arrogant and thought, oh, I don't need this shit anyway. I'm all good. And then I thought, yeah, I can even have a few drinks. My kids were at school at this point, and what people were doing in New Zealand is after school, we were living on the beach, and the mothers would all meet on the decks and have wine, and the kids would play. And I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I can do this. And so I started drinking with them, and I had a good excuse. The AA group were not my tribe. These women were, they had great wine, and I'm fine. And of course, it wasn't long until I wasn't fine. But I kept up the act for almost 13 years. Some of the red flags were just seeing my mother and me. Number one, hiding in recycling, hiding the bottles. My kids saying, oh, Mommy, we don't like it when you drink that red wine. And that kind of thing where I felt it, I knew, but I didn't want to look.
Yeah.
And that went on for, almost 13 years.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? With having an alcoholic parent, you know how it's going to end, and you know the signs, and you know it's not good, and you know how it feels to be the child of an alcoholic. So then you worry about your children.
Exactly. And I had done a lot of work in ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And exactly. And I just kept looking at my boys thinking, I will not be that person. I will not be that person. I had started writing my first book by then, This Way Up. I was writing, and I'd do meditation, and I would just get this overwhelming feeling of, Patti, you are such a damn hypocrite. It was really overwhelming. And my business partner at the time, Deb, and I were running a women's workshop, and it was a Saturday night, and they had brought a bunch of wine, and we were drinking wine with them. And at one point, Deb looked at me and nudged me like, stop, because I was drinking more than all the rest of the participants. And the next morning she said, I cannot work with you when you are drinking like that. You're out of control. And I thought, that's it, exactly. I'm out of control.
Yeah.
And at that point, I stopped drinking the second time in 2014.
You went back to AA, but you found a group that worked for you, hopefully.
What happened is I stopped drinking, and I was clean and doing okay and doing all the things that I knew I should do. I was going to therapy. I was journaling. I journal a lot. I'm a real journaler. I was being creative. I was drawing and painting and doing things that I knew were right, but I missed that connection. The 𝐬𝐿 Hari quote, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. Yeah, and that's what I missed. My friends weren't drinking a lot, but they were still drinking, and there wasn't that fellowship, that connection of people. As you said in one of the podcasts, it's like the opposite of a cocktail party. It's not all that surface chat. People get in there and they're gritty, and I missed that. I was at coffee with one of my sons, and a man walked in that I vaguely remembered from sobriety the first time, and with him was this woman, and I thought, oh, now she is cool. She looks really cool. She was wearing this flowy skirt. She had this wild white hair. And I thought, oh, I like her. So I went up to him and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Patti. And he said, oh, God, yeah, I remember you. You were Carla's sponsor. And then all of a sudden you disappeared. Where have you been? I said, gave him a little rundown. And he said, sit down, talk. And I said, thank you, but I don't actually want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. And I turned to the woman he was with and I said, are you in sobriety too? And she said, yes. And I said, I am looking for a women's meeting and a different meeting than what's going on here. She said, oh, me too. Let's start one. And so we started an NA meeting, not AA. AA I found to be more pedantic. And we started NA as a global, whatever your addiction is, we don't care, come and hang out. People came that had food addiction, gambling addiction, porn addiction, every drug you can name addiction, and quite a few alcoholics too. What we talked about is what we wanted to create. Her name's Rosie, and what Rosie and I wanted to create is a place where people focused on emotional sobriety, not the pedantic big book insanity.
Yeah. So you didn't do the 12 steps per se.
They were there. We alluded to it exactly, and they were there, and we referred people if that's what they needed. Well, what happened a lot is that it was people who had been clean and sober for a while that needed something else. That's what I talk about in Recovery Road Trip is we get clean and sober, which is great. We get our clarity back, but when we get it back, all that shit that we were drinking to cover up comes tumbling down, and it's, okay, I need more.
Yeah. And there's a definite kind of, I'm sober now, what phase? And there's even a feeling of, oh my God, have I done the right thing?
Exactly.
Agree.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
completely.
yeah, I went to AA, but and it didn't work for me because it's not about not drinking, is it? It's about so much more. That's the beginning of it, yes, but then you have to really do the work then.
That's exactly right. And that was just so important. And that is why I wrote Recovery Road Trip, because there's that searching, that longing. It's okay. I'm clean and sober. I can feel myself now. I've got all these emotions. I want to reclaim myself. But holy shit, how? What do I do? And a lot of times in the rooms, people don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book, because you'd written another book before that.
Yeah. The first book I wrote was This Way Up. People always ask me, are they memoirs? Much of both books are aspects of my life. However, it's not my life. I never went on that specific road trip. I never had the dreams that the protagonist Kat had in This Way Up. But a lot of pieces were from that. The first book I was writing was about that search for self. My kids were leaving home. I was facing empty nest. I was running workshops for women, and a lot of the women said, this workshop's great, but what next? We want something else.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus to write that book. And the second half was a journaling workbook. Recovery Road Trip was a lot about after I relapsed and came back in the rooms and was getting some ideas, but not really wanting to put it all together. And then COVID hit, and I had a lot of notes. But what happened during COVID was all the meetings went online, and I went to a lot of women's meetings, and women talked about relapse. And I thought, this is interesting. So asked women that I met online who had talked about relapsing if I could talk to them. And I just started taking notes from these women. What led you to relapse? What are some of the things that were difficult for you and led you out there? What brought you back? What do you need now? These conversations were so rich and so juicy. So it took a different turn, and that's how Recovery Road Trip came.
Fantastic. So tell me your conclusions from those conversations about relapse. Why do women relapse?
It's a lot of reasons, obviously, but the main one, I think, is very much what you and I both hit on, is that there's a lot of pieces in pedantic 12-step recovery that's very male-orientated, that is very rigid, that doesn't allow for a lot of women's experience that is more fluid, that is more emotional. And if you don't find the right group that allows for that fluidity and that emotional body, it's too stifling. And women say, screw it, I don't want to do this anymore. And yet, if they start drinking again, things unspool.
Yes.
So I left. I came back. I'm looking for something. So looking for that sort of next piece. And what I talk about in the book and what I talk about with women that I'm talking to is, if you're needing it, find a good therapist, someone you can work with, find a sober coach, someone you can work with on that new level. Creativity, find something that you love working with creativity, because that connects you to that higher space.
Yeah, that's what we say to people when you get that flatness, which hits most of us in early sobriety, because we fall on booze, don't we?
Yeah.
You've got to find something else to do. Start exploring hobbies. You need to find another passion. For me, my passion's been running Tribe Sober. So that was a nice one. But we've seen it in our community. People have got so into creativity and sport. And once they get hooked on something else, and they don't even think about the alcohol. I don't know if you ever heard the podcast that I did with Dr. Loretta Broining. She's a neuroscientist, and I love her take on it, that our brain always needs a project. So early sobriety, the brain's thinking, oh, we've got a nice project here. We're going to get sober. We get sober, and then the brain's thinking, so now what?
Now what? Now what? Now what? These little rodents. Now what? Now what? Absolutely. And it is like that. I think a lot of people, once they get to that point, they're saying, I hear it a lot saying, oh, I must be ADHD because I'm saying now what? And it's not necessarily, maybe, but find something else that makes you hum. and allow that, because our brains want that. We're constantly growing and our brains want us to.
Yeah. Yeah. And another issue I had with AA, it was all about willpower and deprivation. I don't think it should be, because for me personally, my life has improved dramatically since I quit drinking. And we talk about it in Tribe Sober as a lifestyle upgrade.
Yes.
Creating a beautiful alcohol-free life that we love. So there's no deprivation there. That was why I felt it wasn't working for me, because I think we just need to see alcohol in a completely different way and realize that, especially as women, we've been manipulated for decades, haven't we? By
Decades.
big alcohol. It's glamorous, it's
Yeah.
how we relax, it's how we socialize.
All of that. Yeah.
Literally got all these limiting beliefs that we have to overturn. Deeper than willpower, isn't it? 'Cause
Oh,
that's our
completely.
subconscious mind.
And on so many levels. Did you read Quit Like a Woman with Holly Whitaker?
Yes.
She talks specifically about those ads, but then you go the next step. Somebody on your podcast, Jen.
The activist, yeah.
Yeah, and talking about how women are targeted with alcohol and
we-
mommy culture. And you see it on all the social medias. Mommy needs vodka, mommy needs wine. Yeah, all of these things. And so it's all targeted. Or like you said, how glamorous it is that, of course, you can't have a celebration without bubbles. And that's a catchphrase. Who's bringing the bubbles? And
Yeah. And we've all fallen for it, haven't we?
oh, we have. When I relapsed, because what I saw were the yummy mummies on the deck in the sunshine with the good wine. And it was such good wine. How could I resist? And that they were the cool ones. They were the cool ones. I wanted to be part of that group. And look how much fun they're having. And, it was just tied in a little bow, exactly like we've been sold.
Yeah, and we've got such a need to belong, haven't we,
Oh,
to our tribe as humans. So that's why we need a community, even when we're sober.
Yeah.
We've got people in our community that have been sober for years, but we all need each other because we've got our people now. Otherwise, you find yourself pulled towards people that are drinking just because it's a crowd that you can around and fit in with. Every time I watch a movie now, I play a game, I say, how long until the star of the show comes out? And that's alcohol, of course. And it's usually less than 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Almost any show you're watching. Yeah. People getting together and the first thing they're doing is pouring the wine, drinking it. Yeah. It's
Yeah, the ladies have a lovely big
Scotch.
glass of wine.
Yes.
And the macho hero has a scotch.
exactly. Yeah. Completely. James Bond. Yeah.
That mix of the trillions that big alcohol are spending on the marketing, and then the peer pressure. Even if you just say, I'm taking a break from alcohol, is it why?
Exactly. Exactly. All that. And yet, when you look at it, well, why are you drinking? It's
Exactly.
toxic. You're poisoning yourself.
Exactly.
And yet, people don't want to hear it. Once you say you're not drinking, there's a lot of places you're not invited anymore.
Absolutely. I've noticed that. Yeah, that's why you need new people, right?
That's right.
You
That's
need
absolutely
friends.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but my friends, they seem to fall into 2 categories. I had my true friends that have stayed with me. Some of them have even followed my example. And then others that were really my drinking buddies, and they've gradually drifted away. Or I might bump into them by chance and they say, oh, you're still doing that weird non-drink.
Rose.
And
Definitely.
yeah, it's been 10 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Very much. There's just people that drifted away or really actively will avoid me because I am a mirror of them drinking. And they don't want to see it.
I felt that you framed the recovery journey not just about sobriety, but reconnecting with purpose and joy. That's beautiful. So talk to us a little bit about your take on that.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing that. And it was so important because that is something that I do find that a lot of people miss in recovery, is that it's not about the willpower and about not drinking. We are here to be expressions of joy. We are here to find that deep purpose, to express it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck and get scared. Oh, I don't know what it is. And especially if you've been drinking or using drugs for a long time, or what often happens, and I'm sure you've seen this, is that giving up alcohol or drugs then leads to compulsive eating or gambling or sex or whatever the next thing is to pick up, because our brain, as you were talking about, is looking for that thing that's going to help it move on. And we're searching, but instead of allowing that space, that pause to find that, instead we're trying to fill it up. It's, oh, okay, I'm really uncomfortable in my skin here. And what's next?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a expression in Tribe Sober. It's one of our coaches brought this up and it's really stuck. She says that if we're going to do this thing, get sober in the first place, we've got to learn to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's true, isn't it? And that's what makes us go, what else can I do if I'm not drinking?
Exactly.
And when you talk, as you say, is just be still.
Yeah. And when I talk to women about this process, so many women will break down crying. I have no idea what brings me joy. I have no idea what my purpose is. My kids are gone now. The whole idea of empty nest with addicts, it's a scary place to be. They're gone now. My purpose is gone. That happens with so many women.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you were a fabulous mother, that you were a fabulous person before that. So step back. You can still be a great mother, but how about you? What's making your heart sing for you? Yeah. And that's a scary journey, to be looking at that purpose and joy and that total expression of self.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I wrote a blog once because when I had my early sobriety blues, as I refer to them now, they lasted for months actually. And I nearly gave up because I just felt so miserable that I felt like I painted myself into this corner, because my husband was proud of me. My son was proud of me. I was blogging about how wonderful sobriety was, but I was really fed up. So I thought, what can I do? And I didn't want to start drinking again. So I thought, I'm just going to sit with this thing. And I did. I was very brave. I just sat and I was pretty miserable for months. And then eventually I wrote about it and I called that experience sitting in the void, because that's what I did. I sat in the void and I had no idea what my purpose was, no idea how I was going to ever get joy again without the wine. And then one day I just had this idea. My background was in training and development and coaching. And I thought maybe I'll start a community and figure out how we do this thing with some other women. So that's how I started Tribe Sober. And then I had to learn about marketing and do a website and write stuff and coach people. So I never looked back really, but I had to sit in the void. And I've learned since that there's even a scientific term for the void. It's called liminal space. And that's where the creativity, that's where we'll get those ideas. So anybody that feels a bit stuck in their sobriety, I would say, just persevere because it'll come. Thinking back to what you enjoyed doing as a child is a good thing.
Exactly. And I was just going to say that a lot is being written now about how treacherous, not just painful and hard, but treacherous it is that kids are not having that time and space anymore because of phones, because of screens, because of constant barrage. And yet that is so important, that void, that daydreaming, that time of daydreaming that allows these ideas and this creativity to come. Because when we don't do it, when we're constantly inputting stuff, we don't have that space, that sitting in the void, as you put it.
Because you remember when we were teenagers, we'd be mooching around saying, oh, I'm so bored.
So bored. Yeah.
You never hear teenagers saying that now because they're on their phones, aren't they?
Yep, exactly. And I'm sure you know, and the woman who was on your podcast would definitely know, is how it's changed the brains of kids now. The whole structure of brain and the way that it's functioning is completely changing. It's really scary.
That was Anna Lemke, wasn't it? The author of Dopamine Nation.
Dopamine Nation, exactly.
Interesting, yeah.
Getting those constant dopamine hits and constantly looking for more and faster. And yeah, it's so intense. And no one really knows what's going to happen with that. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. We do need that time sitting in the void. We need that time to daydream. We need that time to, quote unquote, be bored, that allows for that spaciousness, that spaciousness for those new ideas to come.
I remember being in corporate and I had this colleague and I'd often catch him looking out the window. I don't know what he was thinking about, but in fact, he was one of the most creative people on our team because he would make time just to look out the window and calm down a bit, whereas the rest of us were rushing around like maniacs and filling our diaries, filling every single moment in our diaries. But he would have big spaces in his diary, I remember.
That's one of the things when I am running workshops and working with women around journaling is just write whatever comes up and just breathe and don't feel like you have to write something. And if something pops into your mind, leave that spaciousness. Have you read Julia Cameron, Artist's Way?
Yeah, it's great. I do the morning pages, actually. I just wake up with my coffee and scribble.
You don't have to have a plan. You don't have to know what you're going to write. Just be in that void, in that pause, and allow.
I chuck mine in the bin afterwards. And knowing that I'm going to do that takes the pressure off.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the second part of your book is about journaling, isn't it? I'm a great journaling fan as well. But for anybody that doesn't really understand the power of it, can you talk a little bit about how it helps us in recovery?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of the most important tools that I ever had in my recovery because it gave me, I'm not going to say gives everyone, but for me, speaking from self, it allowed me access to that inner self and to some of that inner conflict. And when I was writing, things will come out that I can then go, okay, and then step back and be able to look at it. It's that connection to that internal dialogue and higher self, all that because we get out of the way. Journaling is not a list of what I'm going to do. It's not a list of what I want to write about. It's that free flow opening. And that's why in the second half of Recovery Road Trip, there's different things to do on different days. And some of them are, here's a topic, put pen to paper. You don't have to think about it. Just write what comes up. Because when we just write what comes up instead of thinking, what should I write? It gets you into a flow, connecting into that higher self and that flow energy. When we're in flow, we're outside of that rigid day-to-day self.
And I think that flow is joy, really. Because once we're totally absorbed in something, whether it's writing, whether it's watching a sunset or whatever, doing some kind of sport, we're in the flow, aren't we?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I just think it is such an important tool. And hear from so many women who are so afraid of it because it's that empty page. What do I write? What do I write? Don't worry about what you write.
Yeah.
Scribble. As you said, scribble. One of the things that Annie Lamott says is sit quietly, close your eyes and say, show me. Show me. Yeah. So it comes. Show me. Okay. And I have had some of the most amazing insights by just getting quiet and doodling, writing, and then something will come to me and I'll write and I'll go, oh, that's an interesting piece.
Yeah. That's why it's called creative writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can tap into your creativity. But I come across a lot of women that's, I can't write. So, we're not looking to write war and peace. We're just looking to unlock our creativity, really.
Great.
It's healing, isn't it? It's cathartic.
So healing.
Yeah.
So healing. In our workshops, we used to do an exercise, say, get the crap out, and just put on some music, background music, and get it out. If you're not sure what that is, scratch at it. Let that emotion out. And invariably, people ended up externalizing the internal process and tears and emotion and scratching things out just to get that out. And then often a real softening in writing that wouldn't have happened had we not allowed that process to unfold.
So tell us about your writing workshops, because we might have some people that are interested in those. How do they work?
Generally speaking, it's very free flow. I am not one to tell anyone how to write. We usually start with just a free flow exercise coming from an idea. Somebody can bring an idea in. That's usually what I do because I want it to be internal, that it's not just me telling you what you're going to write. And then from that, people are writing what popped into your mind, what came up for you, and writing from that. That's an opening exercise. It's very much a free flow opening. No one's going to see it. This is for you. It's to access that inner self. I always say right from the beginning with the writing, this is not for anyone else's eyes. I am not here as a writing teacher to get you published. This is for you. It's to get your juices flowing, your creativity. It's for you to connect with that self. So that's the kind of writing workshop. It's very much about connection to self.
Maybe you'll come and do a talk at our Zoom cafe. We invite our members to join us on a Saturday, and people show up from all over the world, which is nice. We get lots of Americans coming. You could come as a guest and talk to our
Love that.
They'd love it. And
I would love that. I would love to come because I love listening to your podcast because, yeah, all the people that you have from all over the world, all the different accents and world experiences, traveling and having that kind of experience just opens us up.
I used to run physical workshops when I started Tribe Sober, and then COVID hit, and I thought I better try them on Zoom. And I wasn't very hopeful because in the physical workshops, there were lots of tears and hugging, and I thought, how's that going to work? But we still get lots of tears. So it's okay. And it's exciting because it means that we can open it up to people all over the world.
Absolutely. The writing workshops that I've done on my own have been on Zoom, whereas the ones that I did with my business partner, we were doing it in New Zealand and in Bali.
What would you hope that women walk away with after reading Recovery Road Trip?
Great question. Thank you. What I would hope is that there are several aha moments for self, that once they read the book about Meg's journey, that they feel a connection, that they feel a camaraderie, that something sings inside of them that draws them to then follow the path that Meg went through. I've had some women write to me, say, I went into the journaling expecting something that would be following Meg's journey. But what happened was I took a completely different turn and I connected with a part of myself that I did not expect. And that's just made my heart sing. Perfect feedback. A woman wrote to me and said, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want Meg's journey to end. I'm afraid to start my own. I just didn't want to put the book down. And I wrote back to her and I said, oh, that makes me really happy. But the more important journey is yours. I understand the reticence, but please start and let me know what happens. And she's written to me a lot since then and told me as she's completed each piece, things that happened for her. And it's just, to me, like opening something up. And if a woman says that as she opened it up and she's writing about it, something emerges that she wasn't expecting, that makes me incredibly happy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well done for the book. It's going to change lives. Where can people buy it?
It can be purchased through Simon & Schuster. It can be purchased, of course, on Amazon. I always push people to buy it at indie bookstores if at all possible. On Bookshop, I've seen it at Waterstones in the UK. It's available on Kindle. It's available on audiobook. So you can get it in as an ebook, audiobook, or hard book. And I love hearing from people. When people write to me, I write back because it's very personal to me.
Okay, so you don't mind me giving out your email address?
Oh, please do.
I'll put
Absolutely.
it in the show notes. Anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention?
The main thing is something that you talk about all the time in your podcast, so I'm just reiterating what you say, but it's so worth it. If you're thinking it's hard, if you're thinking, I don't know if this is what I want to do, it is so worth it. Just remember that they're selling us. They're selling us this idea that's not true. It's poison. It's toxic. It's toxic. And once we regain our bodies and our vibrancy and our health, it's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So any of your listeners that are thinking, I don't know if this is worth it, oh my God, it's worth it. And when you read anything about aging, one of the first thing it says is stay away from alcohol. It's toxic. It poisons our system, and our system, as we age, is struggling a bit more. And I go back to that quote by Johann Hari. What we need is connection. So if you're having a hard time because all of your friends are sitting on the deck drinking wine or going to the pub and drinking beers, find your tribe. And you have it right here, Tribe Sober. It's right here. We need that community. We need that tribe.
We
We
do.
need that connection, because then we're holding hands and just walking each other home.